Okay, so Rutherford's main contribution to the model of the atom is the fact that he discovered that yes, the atom does in fact have a positive charge, and actually, contradictory to what Thomson had believed, it's actually found only in the centermost part of the atom, which we now call, of course, the nucleus. So not only did Rutherford discover essentially the proton, but also the fact that the nucleus in the center of the atom is a densely packed mass where you have those protons that are found. Okay, so his model of the atom is sometimes referred to as the nuclear model since it involves the nucleus. So the electrons are still, of course, present. Remember that those were proven already before. However, because we know there's this densely packed nucleus and the empty space that's around it is actually where the electrons are assumed to be. Now, at this point, there's no real understanding in terms of like what those electrons are doing or how they are organized. Okay, so that's going to come a little bit later on. But we know that the nucleus is in the center, it's positive, and there are electrons around it. So his experiment that he used in order to essentially prove this is known as the gold foil experiment, since it uses gold foil. I believe I have another diagram. No, I don't. Okay, so I'll have a video linked going into this in more depth. Essentially, in a nutshell, what he ended up doing, and I know that you've reviewed this in your other previous chemistry courses, is he took essentially positive charges and almost like little mini bullets and shot it towards a thin piece of gold foil. So like very, very thin piece. Think of aluminum foil but made of gold. So what happens is, notice that sometimes the proton or the positive charges would bounce or reflect off its pathway, and sometimes they would just simply go right through. So the fact that they were able to move through the space proved that the area around this nucleus is empty space. However, of course, the fact that you had those the different positives that are bouncing away not only proved that there was something dense in the center of that atom, but also it had to be positively charged because, of course, we know that like charges will repel. So it kind of proved a twofold, right? You have empty space, a dense center, and it proved that dense center has a positive charge. So just quickly to go over some terminology. So of course we know protons is the term for our positive charges in the center of the atom. In terms of charges comparison to each other, the charge is equal but opposite of an electron, right? So electrons are essentially, we deem it really a -1 and protons a +1, but really it's just they're equal in charge. The one is just an arbitrary number. So usually when we write our symbol for a proton, sometimes you'll see a lowercase p with a positive symbol, or an electron, a lowercase e, with a little negative superscript symbol. Now, in terms of mass, they're actually very different in terms of mass. An electron is actually approximately 2,000 times smaller than a proton. So to equal one proton, you would need 2,000 electrons to equal in terms of mass. So they're very, very, very tiny. Sometimes you'll see the electron almost be deemed as being 0, just to kind of keep things simple, and a proton being deemed as a 1 atomic mass unit. However, an electron is not really 0. It does have a mass. It's just that in comparison, the electron is so small that we almost just say that in comparison to a proton, it's kind of like nothing. And then, of course, we have the neutron. So neutron is neutral. So we have a lowercase n, and sometimes you'll see a little 0 at the top on the superscript area. So James Chadwick was the person who was able to contribute to the atomic model and discover the fact that there are neutrons. Now, neutrons really don't add anything to the atom itself other than mass. So a neutron is the same mass as a proton, but of course it has no charge, a zero charge. So the neutrons are also found in the nucleus. So we have protons and neutrons that are found in the nucleus. Okay, pardon my spelling. It's hard to write with the mouse sometimes. So how did he go about doing this? So actually how this was done has to do with the discovery of isotopes. So essentially using a mass spectrometer and looking at different radioactive elements, just kind of in a nutshell, let's talk about this, what happened. If you compare the different atoms for a particular element, even though they are identical in terms of how they behave, the masses of them were different. So for example, I can have a carbon atom that has an atomic mass of 12, or a carbon atom that has an atomic mass of 13. Now those carbons are exactly the same. The only difference is the 13 is a little bit heavier because of the fact that it has one additional neutron. Okay, so just comparing different sizes of the same element. And a mass spectrometer is essentially an instrument that separates different particles based on mass. So they found that some were lighter and some were heavier, even though it was the exact same element. So those are what are called isotopes of one another. So carbon, let's say, these are two isotopes of carbon. So meaning they have the same number of protons and electrons, but the number of neutrons can vary. Okay, so moving forward, so we've looked at everyone up until basically Chadwick after Rutherford. So we haven't gotten to the last one that you probably know very well, who's Bohr. But we're going to look at something else first. So Bohr really helped to contribute, his ideas helped to go with this quantum theory. And this is what we're going to focus on right now. So quantum mechanics, or the quantum theory of the atom, is what is currently held to be factual for how the atom exists. So meaning over time, different things have changed, obviously, of how we think of atoms. And the quantum theory is the latest and greatest that we are going to look at. So right now we're going to kind of talk about different things that contributed to it, and then we'll get to basically the rest of this chapter is going to be looking at the quantum theory in general. So Planck was a scientist that basically started looking at what happens when you add energy to atoms, and actually more specifically to solids. So what ended up happening is that, or what he noticed is that when you heat up a solid, right, so typically when you heat or you add energy, there is a change in color sometimes. Okay, not everything does, but think of maybe even your stove at home. When your stove, if you have an electric stove that has a coil on the inside, you'll notice that it's a grayish kind of metallic color. And then when the stove is on, maybe it's like a reddish or orangey color. So nothing has changed about what the coil is made of, but what's changed is the amount of energy that's been added to it, right? So there's electricity running through it that, of course, is giving off heat. So what's happening there is the atoms, let's say in that coil, they're absorbing the electricity, and what's happening is it is absorbing, of course, a small quantity of energy. So it's kind of soaking in energy, and actually it gives off that energy also in the form of heat. So it takes in electricity and it gives off heat, for example, right? Einstein also kind of he performed an experiment known as the photoelectric effect that kind of did the same thing, except not necessarily with heat, but the same idea. So meaning the fact that atoms, what happens is they can gain energy to essentially see a change. Maybe atoms give off energy and then maybe light comes off. Light is emitted. Okay, we're going to look into more detail. Well, why does this happen? So what's happening there is this amount of energy is called a quantum of energy. So the amount of energy that is absorbed by atoms has a specific value. Okay, and every atom can absorb a different amount of energy. So maybe, I don't know, making up numbers, but let's say an atom of gold can absorb 10 joules, and an atom of silver can absorb 15 joules. Every element can absorb a different amount of energy, but that amount of energy is a specific amount, and it's known as a quantum. So a specific amount of energy. So this 10 joules was a quantum of energy that an atom of gold would gain, right? So what was funny and what was noticed is that the specific amount of energy that was absorbed was actually the same amount of energy that was released or emitted. So meaning the quantum of energy that an atom takes in is equal to the quantum of energy that the atom will then, give off. Okay, so the amount of energy that is given off obviously depends on the type of element. And actually the result of what happens with that, it depends on actually the wavelength of that energy. When we see a light, the reason why we're able to see the light is because that quantum of energy being released is within the visible spectrum. Okay, so before we get into that a little bit further, I want to review the electromagnetic spectrum, because this will relate to the quanta, I guess is the pluralized version, but the amount of energy that is absorbed, kind of what we see as a result of that, depends on where in this electromagnetic spectrum it lies. So James Maxwell is one of the people who contributed to the electromagnetic spectrum and looking at energy, right? Energy travels in wavelengths. So actually, before we even get into this, let's kind of review what a wavelength is when we say that. So this goes way back to grade 10, right? So a wavelength is really a measurement of distance from, so all energy travels in these waves, these oscillations, right? So the top of the oscillation is known as a crest, and the bottom, or like the valley part, is known as a trough. Okay, so a wavelength, and this is the symbol for wavelength, is called lambda. So the symbol for wavelength can either be measured really from crest to crest or from trough to trough. It's going to be the same measurement no matter what, right? So it's a measurement of distance. Now, how long of a distance this is actually tells us about the type of energy it is. The longer the wavelength is, the lower that energy is. The smaller the wavelength, the higher that energy happens to be, or the stronger that energy is. Okay, so let's go back here for a second. So here are measurements of distance. So of course, 1 meter is a very big distance for a wavelength. And over here we have tiny, if you notice, it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So these numbers here are your wavelength numbers. So as we go from left to right, the wavelength is getting smaller. So notice here, right, long wavelength, right? Imagine the crest would be there. Long wavelength, here you have a short wavelength. So that means this side of the spectrum has low energy, and this side of the spectrum has high energy.